Hello everyone, welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah. Here we're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav, and we will be learning today Mir Hashem Daf Kuf Lamed Daled Amid Aleph. I just realized that we have a tiny bit of Siman Taf Reish Samach Daled Sif Beis left on the very top of Kuf Lamed Daled Amid Aleph. I didn't even take a look at it when I prepared the share. I forgot that we didn't do it, but it's the words of the Ramah here in Sif Beis. So, says the Ramah, very top line, Kuf Lamed Daled Amid Aleph, Hago. V'nagu, the minig is, Sheshamish Beis HaKnesses Mevi Arava Limkar, that the Shamish of the Shul brings Aravas on Hoshana Rabbah to sell to the Tzibur. K'moi shahaya haminig bizman shebeis hamikdash haya kayim. This mirrors the minig that existed at the time of the Beis Hamikdash, sheyibane b'mehera v'yamenu, where the shluchei bezdin sent Hoshanas. What we've learned is the Rishonim, even though there's a machlokes over precisely how the ceremony of the Aravas was done around the Mizbeach, were the hakafas with the lulavim, or were the hakafas done with the Hoshanas, but everybody agrees that the Shluchei Bezdin sent tall Hoshanas to the Mizbeach. People did nanuim with them. Eventually they were erected alongside the Mizbeach. So the same way it was the Shluchei Bezdin that brought the Hoshanas to the time of the Beis HaMikdash, so too the Shamish of the Beis HaKnesses is the one who brings the Hoshanas to Shul on Hoshana Rabbah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Kat Yud Gimel Kamay Shahaya Haminig Shahayu Shluchei Bezdin Mevian Lahen. And I always, in my mind, I just have to remember, I have to mention Rav Yossel Fishman, Alav Shalom from the Sephardic Shul in Borough Park, who was the Shamish for over 40 years of the Sephardic Shul in Borough Park, a good family friend. I think he actually did my upsharing, who sold the Lulavim, the Esrogim, the Ishanas, Tzarche Chanukah, in Yonah D'Yoma. He always had olive oil and wicks and everything else. And his office smelled like Esrogim all year round. Zachar La Toivi, he's Zichrei Baruch. He's a big Talmud Chacham. I think he once told me that in all the years of the Sephardic Shul, under his control, they never put away a Sefer Torah with a psul on Shabbos. And that was because he was the Balkara upstairs in the upstairs minyan. And what he would do was, he would go during the week, he would go upstairs, he would take out the Sefer Torah, and he would read the Parsha once inside the Sefer Torah for the upstairs shul. And if there were any problems, he was a Magia. He would be Magia the Sefer Torah. Then he would go downstairs and he would take out the Sefer Torah that they were going to use downstairs at the 8:30 minyan, and he would do the second time Chumash in the Sefer Torah for the downstairs minyan. And if there was a problem, he would be Magia it. And this is how he did Shtay Mikra Vecha Targum. Then he would take out a Chumash and he would do Targum. Okay. Sif Gimel. Says the Mechaber, Yesh mi sha'omer. There are those that say, and in the Berurah, this is brought down from the Ran and others, Yesh mi sha'omer, sha'af b'yom zeh makifim belulav v'loy ba'arava. There are those that say, says the Mechaber, that on Hoshana Rabbah we make the hakafas with the lulav, which is actually our minig, and not with the aravas, not with the Hoshanas. Now, as we just mentioned previously, we have this great machlokes rishonim of precisely how the hakafas were done. We have the Rambam, right? We have the Rambam that said that the hakafas were done with the Daled Minim. And then we have Rashi, who says that the hakafas in the Beis HaMikdash around the Mizbeach were done with the Aravas, with the Hoshanas. So, if you hold like the Rambam, that the hakafas around the Mizbeach were done with the Daled Minim, then it makes perfect sense that on Hoshana Rabbah we should make the hakafas with the Daled Minim, with the lulav, because that's exactly the way it was done in the Beis HaMikdash. If you hold that the hakafas in the Beis HaMikdash were done with the aravas and not with the lulav, so then it's a little bit difficult to understand why nowadays we would do it with the Daled Minim. If the whole reason we're making these hakafas is a zeichel hamikdash, Why would we do it with the Daled Minim when in the Beis Hamikdash it was done with the Hashanahs? And what you're forced to say is that the idea that we make hakafas around the bima, that's a zeichel hamikdash to the hakafas that were made in the Beis Hamikdash. But we do it with the Daled Minim to show the chavivus of the Daled Minim. We don't do it with Hashanahs because we're not really fulfilling the mitzvah of Hashanahs anyway. Like we said earlier, there is no basis for a mitzvah daraisa of doing anything with the Hashanahs outside of the Beis Hamikdash. The whole thing is only a zeichel hamikdash. So we do it with the Daled Minim, not with the Aravas. In any case, what the Mechaber says here is, Yesh mi she'omer she'af b'yom zeh makifa b'lulav v'lo ba'arava. There are those that say that, and if you look at the Berurah, the Ran actually says that Rashi holds this way. Even though Rashi holds that they didn't make hakafas with the lulav. They made hakafas only with the Hashanahs. Yet, there are those that say that forget about the other 6 days of Yom Tov, but even on Hoshana Rabbah, you make the hakafas with the lulav, not with the aravas. V'loy noagu kain. But the Mechaber says that's not the minig. Elo lahakif by gam ba'arava. Rather, the Mechaber says the minig was to take the Daled Minim, to take the lulav and the Hashanahs and make hakafas. Now, obviously, that's not our minig, and we'll get to the Ramah later on in today's shir, where we'll see our minig. In any case, the Mishnah Berurah says a nice cutting of Dalet, Sha'af b'yom zer, what the Mechaber wants to say is, K'moi b'yomam ha'koidmin she'ein noitlin ha'arava, when the Mechaber says that even on this day we make the hakafas with the lulav and not with the Hashanahs, what the Mechaber means is, just like the first 6 days of Yom Tov. Everybody agrees that the first 6 days of Yom Tov, we make the hakafas with the Daled Minim and not with the Aravas. What the Mechaber is saying is, there are those that say that even on day 7, even on Hoshana Rabbah, we make the hakafas with the lulav and not with the Aravas. Shaloi huk ba'arav al rak liyom zeh. Okay. So Ois Katan Tezvav. V'loy nagu gam ba'arava, and the Mechaber rules over here in Sif Gimel that the minig is to take the lulav and the Hashanahs on Hoshana Rabbah and to make hakafas around the bima with both of them. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the rationale for this would be the Gemara in Sukkot Mem Gimel Amud Beis is plukta ibet makifin belulav oy ba'arava. We have this machlokes in the Gemara how the hakafas were done. Were they done with the lulav or with the arava? The first shita brought down here by the Mechaber holds that they made the hakafas with the lulav, and therefore we make the hakafas with the lulav. And then when the Mechaber says that the minig is to take the lulav and the Hashanahs, what the Mechaber is saying is the minig olamhu kedei lotzeis kaladeis. This minig was a way of trying to be mekayim both shitas. Shagam ma'da amar balulav, because even the shita that holds that the hakafas are really supposed to be done with the lulav, ein paisel and makif ba'arava, it's not a problem if you also take the Hashanahs. V'chein ma'da amar ba'arava, and so too the shita that holds that you're supposed to make the hakafas with the Hashanahs, ein paisel and makif balulav, it's not a problem if you also take the lulav. And this is brought down from the Beis Yosef, who obviously is the Mechaber. And that's why the Mechaber says over here that the minig was to take the lulav and the Hashanahs together to make the hakafas, again, which is not our minig. And the Mishnah Berurah sends us later on to Sif Zayin in the words of the Ramah. And the Achronim all agree that if nobody in the city has a lulav, and now you have to go ahead and you have to make hakafas on Hoshana Rabbah, then certainly you should make hakafas around the bima using aravas. Sif Dalet. Shir arava zu. What is the minimum size of the aravas, the Hashanahs that you're going to use on Hoshana Rabbah? Well, first, how many Hashanahs do you need? That's the first question the Mechaber is going to address. Shir aravazu afilu ola echad bevad echad. The Mechaber says that Me'ikar Adin, if you have one branch of aravas and that branch has one leaf on it, that is enough. Me'ikar Adin, you could be yaitza one branch with one leaf. But the Ramah jumps in right away, and the Ramah says, Haga, miu mechurhu li yais ala echad bevad echad. But the Ramah says it would be repulsive to try to be Mekayim, the mitzvah of Hishanis, using one branch with one leaf. That is certainly not Zekeli Vanveyu. Adarab, it's repulsive. Okay, therefore says the Ramah, Nagu Lasais HaHishanis Yofim. The minig is to make the Hishanis beautiful. Mishom Zekeli Vanveyu. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Tezayin. HaHishanis Yofim. V'toiv lechatchila sheyiyeh al kolpanim shloisha badin. He brings down that at least we should have 3 branches when we go to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Hishanis. Ub'shem Ari kasvu chamisha badin, and the Ari writes that we should use 5. Now the 3 is brought down from the Gemara in the Sharetzion. As Yud Aleph, the Sharetzion says, "Kedei lotze stas Rav Nachman b'Gemara." So we have a source for the 3 in the Gemara. We have a source for 5, which is the common meaning, I believe, from the Ari, which is based on Kabbalah. Now we go weiter in the Shulchan Aruch. Go back now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down to the words of the Mechaber. V'shir orka, and as far as the minimum size, the length of the branches of the Hishanis, says the Mechaber, Kishir Oirech Arava Shebalulav. It should be the same size as the aravas that we use in the lulav. Ois Katan Yud Zayin in the Mishnah Berurah, Kishir Oirech Dahainu Shloisha Tfachim. That would be a minimum size of 3 Tfachim. See, I made a note over here for Dirsha footnote number 12. I don't remember offhand. Oh, okay. Dirsha footnote number 12 brings down. So we have over here so far, the Mechaber said, Me'ikar Adin, you could be yaitza with one branch with one leaf. The Ramah said that is mechur, and we should use, right? We should use, they should be beautiful. Zekeli Vanveyu. The Mishnah Berurah said that you should use at least 3, and we saw that that is a source in the Gemara. The Ari says that we should use 5, and the minimum length is 3 Tvachim, the same length as the aravas in the lulav. Dirsha footnote number 12 says here, V'yesha nagu lasais Hishanis b'Hishana Rabba b'murbios, with a very, very long Hishanis. Shehem anafim aruchim, very long, very tall Hishanis. V'yafim, and beautiful ones. Shenikeres b'hem hamitzvah ba'ayin yafeh. So it should be recognizable that we are striving to do the mitzvah, to perform the mitzvah, ba'ayin yafeh. We want to do it in a beautiful way. We're not being stingy. We're being very open-handed. We want to do the mitzvah beautifully. Kemavur barashi. This is actually a Rashi, Sukkah Mem Daled Amud Beis. Rashi says beferish. He brings down the minig. He says, I think he says v'dagu, or he says the minig nowadays is to use very long Hishanis. I try to go outside to my backyard and I cut really tall Hishanis for Hoshana Rabbah. The Kasva Chayodam Vakisa Shulchan Aruch Shehi Mitzvah Min Hamuvchar V'Hu Noi Mitzvah. So we have a Chayodam, a Kisah Shulchan Aruch, that gives credence to this minig. Also, even nowadays, that this is an Inyan of Zekeli Va'anveyu. The Mishnah Berurah Lo Hisker Minig Zed. The Mishnah Berurah does not mention such a minig. Okay. So let's go back to the Mishnah Berurah's Katan Yud Zayin, the Hainu Shloisha Tvachim, and the even though the Mechaber, the Ramah, they don't mention the shear specifically of 3 Tvachim. The Mechaber said that it's the same length as the aravas that we use in the lulav. What's the source that the Hishanis should have the same length as the aravas in the lulav? Says the Mishnah Berurah, because we only find a kula. The Mechaber said that for Hishanis, you could have one branch with one leaf. Now that has a source in the Gemara. That's a memra of Rav Sheshis on Mem Daled Amud Beis. But we don't find any other specifically mentioned leniencies when it comes to the Hishanis. So therefore, And the Gemara never gives us a minimum size for the Hashanis, for Hoshana Rabbah. So, if we know that we use Aravas in the Lulav, and we know that we have to use Aravas on Hoshana Rabbah, and the Gemara does give us a shear for the Aravas in the Lulav, Shlosh Tvachim, and then the Gemara gives us one specific leniency, one specific kula, when it comes to the Hashanis, that it could be one branch with one leaf, but it doesn't mention any other leniencies. So the assumption is that the dinim are the same as the dinim of the Aravas in the Lulav, and that would come to a minimum length of 3 Tvachim. Excuse me. Continues the Mishnah Berurah. Yesh, I remember there are those that say, Da'arava shel Hoshana Rabbah yesh lita labadim bilti kishurim. There are those that say that we should take the Aravas not tied in a bundle. We should have 3 or 5 loose Aravas. They should not be tied. Aval Rav Moshe Zakusa, Rav Moshe Zakusa was a gadol in Kabbalah, who I believe lived in Italy. So Aval Rav Moshe Zakusa chalak alav v'kasev d'tzarek l'kashram v'chein minagenu. Rav Moshe Zakusa writes al pi Kabbalah that the Hoshana should be tied into a bundle, and that is our minhag. In addition, footnote number 13 discusses an interesting question that I've seen come up many times. Somebody Kanai has a large family, is a wife and kids, and he wants to buy Hoshanas for everyone. Does he have to buy an individual set of Hoshanas for each person who wants to klap Hoshanas? Or could he take his Hoshanas to shul, use them, buy Hoshanas, klap Hoshanas? We're going to see that all you have to do is clap 5 times on the floor, maybe another couple of times on a chair or something to knock off a few leaves, but you don't have to go crazy and knock off all the leaves. Can you do that and then go ahead and bring home the Hoshanas and give them to your wife and to your kids? Or once you used it, maybe it's already used and you can't use it anymore. So it says over here, could you be Mekayim the mitzvah of Hoshanas using a set of Hoshanas that somebody already used? Kasav b'shalos etchuas zakan Aaron she'ein lach b'it ba'arava shechavat ba'acher. This shalos etchuas zakan Aaron, who I'll admit I don't know who this is, says that you should not use aravas that somebody else used. Be'idach, on the other hand, b'shalos etchuas shevet halevi, Rav Vosner zechet tzadik levracha kasav she'poshet sheyacha lotzispa. Rav Vosner said that yes, you can use aravas, Hoshanas that somebody else used already. There is no isser to use the aravas. It's not like it becomes asr bahana. Once it was used, now you can't use it again for the mitzvah of Hoshanas. You want to use it again, use it again. What's the problem? But Rav Vosner said there is a hidur that everybody should have their own set. Now, I don't know if that hidur really applies to the wife and kids at home. In shul, maybe there's a hidur that everybody should have their own set in shul, not that there should be one set that's passed around. But now you use it, now you're finished with it, now you bring it home, you give it to your wife. I'm not even sure if, according to Rav Vosner, there's a hidur in buying a new one. Unless you're going to beat up your aravas and push it, they're not going to look nice. But sometimes you use the aravas, your mamish can't tell that they were used. So now what's the problem? Why is it even not a hidur? If all the leaves didn't come off, Rav Zalman says, unless all the leaves came off, you could mamish reuse them lechatchila. Okay? Now we go weiter in the Shulchan Aruch to the Ramah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down in the Shulchan Aruch, in the middle of the line, in the middle of Sif Daled, the words of the Ramah. Hagah. V'chal ha'paisal ba'arava shebalulav, all of the psulim that apply to the aravas that we use in the lulav, paisal ba'arava zu, also pasal the aravas for the Hoshanas, Of course, with the exception of the fact that for the Ishanis, like we said earlier, you could have one branch with one leaf, and that's okay. But all the other psulim that apply to the aravas of the lulav apply equally to the aravas that you use for the Ishanis. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut in Yud Ches. Therefore, yesh lizaher, we should take care. Shalo gazel. We can't use Ishanis that are stolen. We have to make sure that they're kosher Ishanis that were bought legitimately, not stolen. V'lo yavesh, they should not be dried out. But if they're not mamish dried out, ela kamush, they're just shriveled. Bevade kosher, they're certainly kosher. But nevertheless, says the Chavetz Chaim, even though kimushin, slightly shriveled but not dried up, would be kosher, certainly lechatchila they should be fresh. Uraya, and we can bring a raya to that from the Gemara. Mimad isa sham b'mishnah daf b'mhei amad aleph tahayumanichin aysan begigiyoi shal zahav. It's brought down that in the Beis Hamikdash they would take the aravas and they would put them into golden vases, so that they should not shrivel and they should stay fresh. For whom you should hit their mitzvah. That's the keli vadveu. You want to perform the mitzvah with beautiful haishanis. Now we go back to the Shulchan Aruch, back to the words of the Mechaber, 6 lines down in middle of the line. So, after we perform the hakafas, and we say the Seder of the Haishanis, what precisely do we do with these Haishanis? Says the Mechaber, V'choivit ba al hakarka, we bang them on the ground, oy al hakli, or on some kind of a keli, like a chair or a table, pa'amayim oy shalosh, 2 or 3 times. So says the Mechaber. Now, this is brought down from the Gemara. The Gemara says, chavit, chavit, that they would take the Haishanis and bang them. The word chavit there's a machlekes rishonim how to define the word chavit in the Gemara. Rashi says beferish in the Gemara that chavit does not mean to bang. It means linaneya. It means to make nanuim. And we're about to see that the Ramah is going to say that you don't bang. You don't only bang the Ishanis, you make nanuim with the Ishanis. That's to be Mekayim, the Pirish of Rashi, on the Gemara, when the Gemara says chavit, chavit. Right? I think I have a sukkah. Yeah, I have a sukkah Gemara here. I believe it's Mem Daled Amud Beis. Amar Aivu. Aivu said, Hava ke'imna kamei de Rebbe Elazar bar Tzadok. I was by Rebbe Elazar bar Tzadok. V'ais Yahuhu gavra arava kamei. And a certain individual brought him an arava. Shokil, he took it. Rebbe Elazar bar Tzadok took the arava. Chavit, chavit. V'loi baruch. He took it and chavit, chavit. Zok Rashi, chavit, chavit. Lashad ni anua. This means to make nanuim. So according to Rashi, chavit, chavit. He took them, he made nanuim. V'loi baruch. And he did not make a bracha on them. But that's not what the Rambam says. The Rambam says chavit ala karka. He banged them on the ground. So here we have the Mechaber learns like the Rambam, and the Mechaber says v'chayvit ba al hakarka. You bang the Ishanis on the ground, ay al hakli or on a keli, parmayim oy shalosh 2 or 3 times. Says the Mishnah Berurah cut your test al hakarka oy al hakeli. You bang them on the ground or on a keli. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Ubishem ha'ariz al kasfu, in the name of the Ari, they write, the dafka al hakarka yachboit chamesh chabotos. That bedafka, you should bang the Ishanis on the ground, on karka oilam, not on the floor in the shul. Now this, I don't think this means that nowadays you shouldn't bang them on the floor in the shul, but I have seen people bang the Ishanis on the floor in the shul, and then go outside after davening and bang the aravas 5 times on the karka, because it's brought down from the Ari, al pi Kabbalah, that there's an Indian to bang the Ishanis al karka ha'olam, on the earth 5 times. So Again, b'shem Arizal kosru dedafka la karka yachbait chamesh chavotos. V'toiv lachbait tchila ala karka chamesh chavotos. And the Mishnah Berurah says that it would be good to bang them 5 times on the ground, v'achakach al hakelim, and then to bang them on some kind of a keli, lahaser he'olin, to knock off some leaves. There is an inyan to knock off leaves. It brings us down from the Berurah Yaakov. And bedafka, that you should bang it on the ground first and then on the keli. Because you don't want to take a risk that you're going to knock off all the leaves, and then when you go to bang it on the karka, they're not going to be kosher anymore because, you knocked off all of the leaves. So first bang it on the ground 5 times, then bang it on a chair or a table to knock off some leaves. I started looking into what the timing for all of this is, but this is above my pay grade. This is all al pi Kabbalah. Let's remember that this is a minig on Nevi'im. It's a minig brought down to us from the Nevi'im, and there's a lot of Kabbalah going on over here of why to bang on the karka, why to knock off leaves. There's things brought down that the leaves are a symbol to the enemies of Klal Yisrael, or that it's a symbol of the Rishayim within Klal Yisrael, and we bang them off. We want to knock them off. So there's a lot of Kabbalah going on here. Also, the leaves are the shape of the lips. It's to be mechaper on the averis that we do with our speech. So there's a lot of background here. But the Mishnah Berurah concludes there, and he says, "Ve'et sarach lahaser kol he'olin." There is no need at all to knock off all the leaves. And in the Sha'ar Tzira is cut Yud Ches, the Mishnah Berurah is cut Yud Gimel. The Mishnah Berurah brings that down in the name of the Chai Adam. And if you take a look at the Chai Adam over there, the Chai Adam says that the minig that does exist, where people go and they try to knock off all the leaves, he says that that's actually a minig of the children, and they do it mishum simcha. They do it because, you see them in shul, they're all cracking up and having a grand time, banging the Hashanahs and trying to knock off all the leaves, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It makes joyous memories for the children, makes them maybe want to come to shul, so it's not a bad thing. Okay, now we go to Sif Hey. Oh, no, sorry, we do not go to Sif Hey. We did not conclude Sif Daled. We have to go to the words of the Ramah. Very important. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 lines down here in the Shulchan Aruch. Says the Ramah, Hagah. So the Mechaber said that you take the Ishanis and you bang them. And we brought that down from the Rambam. Now the Ramah says, Hagah, v'yesh omrim shetzarech l'nanei bo. There are those that say that we have to make na'anuim with the Ishanis. That's from Rashi, Tor b'shem Rashi. V'nagu lasish shtein. And the Ramah says the minig is to do both na'anuim and to bang them. Menanin ba. First we do na'anuim with them. V'achakach chayv t'noisa. And then we bang them. The minig that I have from my Rebbe, Reuven Feinstein Zolzang Gezut Stark, is he takes the Hashanis, he makes na'anuim with them when we, he first puts down the lulav and picks up the Ishanis when we start. I don't have, if I had a matzir here, I could take a look if this siddur has a Shana Rabbah in it. Maybe it does. Yes, it does. Yeah. So he puts down the lulav right before the paragraph of Ta'aneh Emunim. That's where he puts down the lulav, and then he picks up the Ishanis. That's where we start really speaking about Mayim and asking the Rebbeinu Shalom for Mayim. So he picks up the Ishanis then, and he holds the Ishanis until we get to Kol Mavaser V'Omer, all the way at the end before Hoshia Samecha. And while he says Kol Mavaser V'Omer, he makes Nanuim the same way we make Nanuim with the Daled Minim. That's the minig that my Rebbe has. He makes Nanuim with the Ishanis exactly the same way we make Nanuim with the Daled Minim. And then afterwards, at the end of the Ishanis, after Kaddish, that's when he bangs them on the ground. Okay. Now we go to Sifhei. Says the Mechaber. Ve'ena niteles elo bifnei atzma. When we take the Hashanas, we take the Hashanas by themselves. What does that mean, says the Mechaber? Shelo yegoy davar acher imah. We should not have any other of the Daled Minim tied together with the Hashanas. Avalim yesh biyadoy davar acher lochush. But if you are holding something else together with the Hashanas, you do not have to be concerned. And the Mishnah Berurah is going to say that what that means is you don't have to be concerned for a chatzitza. There's no din of chatzitza, something interposing between your hand and the Hashanas. Now, I'm going to read straight into the Mechaber in Sif Vav. Still a little bit puzzling to me, this Sif Hey and Sif Vav. In Sif Hey, the Mechaber said that we're supposed to take the Hashanas alone, not with anything else. Now in Sif Vav, says the Mechaber, Ein Adam Yoitze Yedei Chavasai Ba'arava Shebelulav. Don't think that you could be Mekayim the mitzvah of Hashanas with your lulav. In other words, what are we saying? We've been saying all along over here that there's a mitzvah to take Hashanas on Hoshana Rabbah. And we said that Me'ikar Adin, you could be Yoitze the Chiv, even with one branch, with one leaf. Well, why do I got to go to the Shamash of the Beis HaKnesses and buy a new set of Hashanas? Guess what? I have a lulav that has 2 aravas in it. So, what's the problem? I'll put down my esrog, I'll take my lulav. And chatzitz is not a problem. So, the fact that there's something else together over there, maybe the keshelah and this and that, well, no problem. There's no chatzitza issue. So, guess what? If I'm holding my lulav bundle, I'm also holding Hashanas. Now, the reality is that in Sif Hey, the Mechaber already ruled out that possibility. Because in Sif Hey, the Mechaber said, Eino niteles elo b'ftei atzma shelo yegoy davar acher imah. You can't tie anything together with the Hashanas when you take it. And the lulav bundle has a lulav hadassim and aravas bound together. So really, it seems to me that the Mechaber already covered that base. And he said that you cannot be yoitza with the lulav bundle because it's the aravas tied together with hadassim and a lulav. Now in Sivav, the Mechaber says, Ein Adam Yoitze Yidei Chavasei Ba'arava Shebelulav. You can't be Yoitze the mitzvah with the aravas that are on the lulav. Now, some of you are thinking right now, well, Rabbi Weiss, maybe what it means in Sivav is don't think that you could take the aravas out of the lulav and use them to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Hashanas. That's not what the Mechaber means, because we're going to see in the Mishnah Berurah that you absolutely can do that. You want to take the aravas out of the lulav when you finished with the lulav and use them for Hashanas? Yes, you could do that. There's no problem with that. So when the Mechaber says over here, Ein Adam Yoitze Yidei Chavasei Ba'arava Shebelulav, he means you cannot be Yoitze the mitzvah of Hashanas by picking up the lulav bundle and using the lulav bundle complete with its aravas to be Yoitze the mitzvah of Hashanas. And says the Mechaber further, even if you were to pick up the lulav bundle twice, once l'shem echad l'shem lulav, once to be mekayim the mitzvah of daled minim together with the esrog, and then you put it down. I'm finished with the daled minim. Ve'echad l'shem arava, and now I'll go pick it up a second time to be mekayim the mitzvah of Hashanas. Maybe then you could do it. So the Mechaber is saying you might think, well, this that you can't use the lulav bundle is only because you picked up the lulav bundle to be mekayim the mitzvah of daled minim. Now you're going to continue holding the lulav bundle and try to be mekayim the mitzvah of Hashanas. That you can't do. You know why? Because there's no hecker that you moved on from one mitzvah to the next mitzvah. It's not recognizable that you're now trying to be mekayim a different mitzvah. But maybe, if I pick up the daled minim to be yotzei the daled minim, then I put everything down. And then I pick up the lulav l'shem arava. Now it's minka remilsa. Now it's clear that I picked it up a second time to be mekayim another mitzvah. Maybe that you could do. Says the Mechaber, no. Ein adam yotzei yidei chavasei ba'arava shebelulav afilu higbia isa shtei pamim echad l'shem lulav ve'echad l'shem arava v'yesh arbim sheyotzei ba. But there are those that say, there's an Avi Ezri that says that you could be yotzei if you pick it up twice. Okay, let's go to Mishnah Berurah's Cut and Chaf. Shelo yegoi davar acher ima. We're not supposed to tie anything else together with the Haishanis when we're being Mekayim the mitzvah of Haishanis. Why, says the Mishnah Berurah, Kedei sheyeh nicker shehu l'shem mitzvah. Because we want it to be very clear that you are now taking the Haishanis to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Haishanis. Now, if the Haishanis are tied together with something else, let's say the Hadassim and the Lulav, it's not clear that you're going now to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Haishanis. Umasha kosev ein lachush, and says the Mishnah Berurah, as far as what the Mechaber says next, that you don't have to be concerned if when you pick them up, there's something else in your hand. What he means is, we don't have to worry about a chatzitza. There's no problem of chatzitza. Now, the Achrayim wonder, why is it that there's no problem of chatzitza? We know that there is a problem of chatzitza by the Talmidim. So if we're comparing the halachas of the Haishanis to the halachas of the Daled Minim, so if there's a problem of chatzitza by Daled Minim, why is there no problem of chatzitza by the Haishanis? There are various answers given. The Chavetz Chaim in the Sha'ar Tzion wants to bring a very clear raya from the Gemara, because this question in Siv Vav of whether or not you could be Yotza with the Aravis that are in the Lulav, could you be Mekayim the mitzvah by picking up the Lulav bundle, is a question in the Gemara. And it's a machloikis in the Gemara. And one sheet in the Gemara holds that you can. And even the Madiyama that says that you can't, says that the reason that you can't is because of the problem of Minka Ramilsa, that it's not recognizable that you're picking up the Haishanis to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Haishanis, that it's a separate mitzvah, separate from the Daled Minim. Now, if there's a problem of Chatzitza, then there's another reason why you can't be Yaitza with the Lulav bundle. Because if you pick up the Lulav bundle, the Lulav and the Hadassim are going to interpose between your hand and the Haishanis. So, why is the whole discussion in the Gemara only about Minka Ramilsa? There should be a discussion about Chatzitza. Elamai, says the Chavetz Chaim, it's clear that Chatzitza is not a problem. So far, the way the Mishnah Berurah is learning, in the Mechaber in Sif Hey, what we learned was, you should not have anything else tied together with the Haishanis, because if anything else is tied together with the Haishanis, then when you pick up the Haishanis, it's not recognizable that you're picking up the Haishanis l'shem mitzvah. Now, we go to Sif Vav, Eis Chaf Aleph in the Mishnah Berurah, V'yesh Oimrim sheYotza ba. So in Sif Vav, the Mechaber said, you can't be Yotza with the Lulav bundle. Well, yeah, I mean, can't be Yotza with the Lulav bundle, because if you try to be Yotza with the Lulav bundle, again, you have something else tied together with the Haishanis. So again, I'm a little bit bothered by Sif Hey and Sif Vav, that L'chaira, the Shaila of Sif Vav was already decided by Sif Hey. The Mechaber said in Sif Vav, there is an opinion that says that you could be Yotza with the Lulav bundle if you pick it up twice. Says the Mishnah Berurah, obviously this is only true if you put down the Daled Minim and then you picked up the Lulav bundle again, clearly l'shem mitzvah. The yesh heker b'zeh l'shem mitzvah. V'da, and you should know, says the Chavetz Chaim, and this is something that I took care to mention earlier. V'da, and you should know, even according to the first opinion, who holds that says that you cannot be Yotza the mitzvah of Haishanis using the Lulav bundle. What the Mechaber means is you can't use the Lulav bundle to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Daled Minim, because then you have a Lulav Hadassim and Aravas Haishanis tied together. But if you open up the Lulav bundle after you finished with the Daled Minim, and now you take the Aravas that you took out of the Lulav bundle and you take them alone, everybody holds that you could do, that you certainly can do. The only shaila is, could you be Yotza Haishanis using the Lulav bundle itself by picking it up a second time? Now we go to Siv Zayin. Siv Zayin. Yesh mi sha'omer. There are those that say, this is the Rashbash, Yesh mi sha'omer, she'ena yacha litla im alulav b'shashu yoytze yidei chayvasai. When you get up to the point on Hoshana Rabbah, when you're taking the Haishanis to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Ishanis. So we already spoke about the Hakafas earlier. The Hakafas we spoke about, we had the Mechaber. The Mechaber said 2 shitas what you should do by the Hakafas around the Bima on Hoshana Rabbah. One sheet is that you go around with the Daled Minim, with the Lulav and the Esrig, not the Aravas. That's what we do. The Mechaber said that some hold that you make the Hakafas on Hoshana Rabbah around the Bima with the Hashanas. And the Mechaber concluded that the minig is that you should take both. You should take the Daled Minim and the Hashanas when you make the Hakafas. And that way you'll be Mekayim both minhagim in the Gemara. You'll be Mekayim the Shita that you should use the Daled Minim, and you'll be Mekayim the Shita that you should use the Hashanas. That's by Hakafas. Now we're finished with Hakafas. Now we get up to the point on Hoshana Rabbah when we are taking the Hashanas to be Mekayim the Minig Anaviyim with Hashanas. At that point, says the Mechaber, Yesh Mi Sha'omer. There's a Rashbash that says, She'ena yochel litla im aluliv b'shashu yoytzer yidei chayvasa. Let's say you follow the meaning of the Mechaber when it comes to the Hakafas, and you made the Hakafas with the lulav and the Daled Minim and the Hashanas. But now you want to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Hashanas. So there's a Rashbash that says you cannot be Mekayim the mitzvah of Hashanas by holding the Hashanas and the Daled Minim. Okay. So yesh bi shaimer sheina yochel little ima lulav b'shashu yoytzi yidei chayvasai ad achar sheyavorech v'yital v'nanea batchila. Unless you first take the Daled Minim alone. I'm sorry. I have to take back what I said. Wow, I can't believe this. I learned this wrong. Faux pas. I prepared this, and what I just said was wrong. I believe what I just said was wrong. Bear with me for 1 second, please. Okay, back up. Back up, erase, take the whiteboard, and erase what I just said. That's not what the Mechaber is addressing here. It's Hoshana Rabbah. You come to shul, and in your lulav case, you have your lulav, and you have Hashanas that you're going to use. You finish Shachris, it's before Halal, and you're going to make the bracha on your lulav. You opened up your lulav case, and you took out your lulav and your Hashanas. Problem. Says the Mechaber, beginning of Sif Zayin, again, Yesh bi sha'omer. There's a Rashbash that says, She'ena yochel litla ima lulav b'shashu yoytze yidei chayvasai. You cannot hold the Hashanas together with the lulav and the esrig when you go to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Daled Minim. Not the mitzvah of Hashanas, which I just erroneously said. No, different question. We know it's a Hoshana Rabbah, and you have with you your lulav, you have your esrig, and you have your Hashanas. We know that according to the Mechaber, which we don't do, but according to the Mechaber, when you get up to Hashanas, you make the Hakafas together with the Daled Minim and the Hashanas. You're up to Halal. You're about to make the bracha on the Daled Minim. Can you take the Hashanas and hold the Hashanas together with the Daled Minim when you make the bracha of Al Natilas Lulav and you make your Nanuim? Says the Mechaber, the Rashbash says no. Yesh bi sha'omer she'ena yochel litla im alulav. You cannot hold the Hashanas together with your Daled Minim. B'shashu yoytze yidei chayvasai, when you go to be yoytze the mitzvah of Daled Minim. Ad achar sheyavarech v'yital v'yananeh b'tchila. Unless you make the bracha on the Daled Minim without the Hashanas, you make your Nanuim with the lulav and the esrog without the Hashanas, then you could go if you want and you could pick up the Hashanas. V'im nitala, and if you didn't listen to this Mechaber, and you held the Hashanas together with the Daled Minim when you made the bracha on the Daled Minim, over mishum bal taisif, the Rashbash would hold that you're over on the Isser of Baal Taisif. Okay. Why would you be over on Baal Taisif? Because, what do you mean? Now you have a lulav, you have an esrig, you have 3 adasim, and you don't have 2 aravas, you have 7 aravas. What are all of these aravas doing over here? You're adding on to the mitzvah. Bal Taisif. That's what the Rashbash says. Continues the Mechaber. Va'achar haninua harishain. But after you make that first set of nanuim with the daled minim, after you made the bracha on the lulav, yachal hulitla malulav. Then if you want, you could pick up the ishanas together with the rest of the daled minim. V'chol sheked b'shas hakafa. And certainly when you make the hakafas by hashanas, then the Mechaber holds that like Hatchila you're supposed to make the hakafas with the lulav and the hashanas. So again, what the Mechaber said so far is, we have a Rashbash. And remember, we have to look at this from the perspective of the Mechaber. From the perspective of the Mechaber, on the Shana Rabbah, when you make a kafis around the bima, you make that kafis with the lulav, the esrig, and the hishanas. Says the Mechaber, you came to shul, you're up the hallow, you're going to make the bracha on Natilas Lulav, and you're going to make your danuim to be Mekayim, the mitzvah of Daled Minim for the last time this Yom Tov. And you have your Ishanis with you too, because it's the Shana Rabbah. Could you take out the Ishanis and hold them together with the Daled Minim when you make that bracha of Al Natilas Lulav? Says the Mechaber, there's a Rashbash that says no. The Rashbash says you can't do that. And if you do, you're over Al Bal Tosef. Now, so you have to hold the lulav and the esrog without the ishanas, make the bracha on the natilas lulav, make your first set of nanuim, l'shem mitzvah of daled minim, then if you want, you could pick up the ishanas. That's what the Mechaber said here so far. Okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah Chav Beis, va'achar, no, not yet. Well, yeah, we read it inside. Va'achar haninu harishain, the Mechaber said, after you make that first set of nanuim with your lulav and esrog, after you make the bracha on the til's lulav, then yachal little lulav. Then if you want, you could pick up the ishanas together with the daled minim, the cholshked b'shas hakafa. And certainly when you get up to ishanas, you could make that kafas together with the daled minim and the ishanas all together, all one big happy family. Says the Mishnah Berurah Chav Beis, va'achar ninua harishain. After you make the first set of nanuim after the bracha of al til's lulav, then you could pick up the ishanas together with the daled minim. Hatam, the rationale for this is, says the Mishnah Berurah, da kaimalon te shaloi bezmanu shalam mitzvah and over Bal Tosef. Because what's the Rashbash saying? What the Rashbash is saying is, when you make the bracha and you go to be mekayim the mitzvah of daled minim, you can't hold the ishanas, because if you do, that's Bal Tosef. So don't take the ishanas. Make the bracha and make the nanuim with just the daled minim. But now you were already mekayim the mitzvah. Now, to pick up the ishanas together with the daled minim is not Bal Tosef unless you have kavana that I'm holding all of this now to be mekayim the mitzvah of daled minim. That would make it Bal Tosef. But absent that kavana, it's not Bal Tosef. So Atam, the rationale is, says the Mishnah Berurah, for the Rashbash, da kaimalon de shaloi bezmanu shalam mitzvah, after the zman of the mitzvah, ain't over al Bal Tosef, there's no isser of Bal Tosef, achi yechaved lahoisef ala mitzvah, unless you have kavana that I'm holding the hishanis now to add on to the mitzvah. V'hacha, and in this case, as described by the Mechaber, kevet she'avra mitzvasai, since you already were mekayim the mitzvah of daled minim, you made the bracha holding the lulav and the esrog, and you made your nanuim, so you were mekayim the mitzvah already. Now you want to pick up the ishanis, have a shaloi bezmanoi. Now it's already considered shaloi bezmanoi. V'hu haloi loy kivet lohisav al mitzvahs lulav. And now this guy who picks up the ishanis together with the daled minim, he's not doing it with kavana to add on to the mitzvah of daled minim. Ki im b'shviliki chasar arava. The only thought that he has in his mind is to now take the ishanis. But he doesn't have in his mind, I want to be moisif on the mitzvah of daled minim. Okay, now continues the Mechaber, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the bottom, and the Mechaber says, "Va'af al pi shemasha kasav she'im netala over mishum Bal Tosef tozhu be'enai." Says the Mechaber, even though I disagree with the critical element of this Rashbash, the Rashbash holds that to make a bracha of al natilas lulav and to pick up the lulav, the esrog, and the ishanis would be Bal Tosef. That's what the Rashbash holds, because you're adding on unnecessary aravas to the daled minim. So the Rashbash holds that would be Bal Tosef. Says the Mechaber, even though I disagree with that critical feature of what the Rashbach said, I hold that is not Baal Tosef. Mikal Mokim, nevertheless, says the Mechaber, Ein hefsid lachush lidvarav. You don't lose anything by being choshish for this Rashbash. There's no reason to take the Ishanis and hold the Ishanis when you make the bracha of Al Netilas Lulav together with your Dalminim. What are you doing it for? So the Mechaber says, there's no reason to do it. Says the Mishnah Rais Chav Gimel, Taz Hu Be'enai. The Mechaber says, I think the Rashbash made a toyas. I don't think this is Baal Tosef. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Hu Azal L'Shitasai. This is the Mechaber L'Shitasai, the Pasak Le'el B'Simen Tafresh Don Aleph Siftez Vav. This is the Mechaber that we learned earlier in Simen Tafresh Don Aleph, the Ba'arava V'Hadas, that when it comes to the amount of the Aravas and the amount of the Hadasim in the Lulav bundle, Moisef Bo Kamashing Yitzah. The Mechaber said you can add on as many Hadasim and as many Aravas as you want. There's no Baal Tosef. So the Mechaber says, I disagree with this Rashbash. There's no problem of Baal Tosef. Let's just finish this Mechaber. Continues the Mechaber, 4 lines from the bottom. V'kosav oid, and further the Rashbash writes, Tagam achar netila v'nianua, even after you make the bracha of Al Netilas Lulav, and you make the Nanuim just with the Daled Minim, now you go to pick up the Ishanis, Tzarich litvais ha'arava levada. You have to make sure that you hold the aravas alone later on to be mekayim the mitzvah of Ishanis lahaker shehi chayva. So it should be recognizable that now you're going to be mekayim the chiyuv of Ishanis. Ubeshas hachapata, and when it comes time to make the danuim or to bang the aravas, yitlena b'fnei atzma, you should hold them alone for yoytza b'yidei chevasai to be mekayim the mitzvah. This is already the concept that we saw in Sifhei and Sivav, that certainly when you take the Ishanis to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Ishanis, you have to be holding the Ishanis alone, so that there's a hecker that what you're doing now is to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Ishanis. Okay. I thought we would cover the Ramah, not to be. We're already going long. So, Mir Hashem, tomorrow we'll repeat a little bit of what we said now. We'll go into the Ramah, to the minig that we have nowadays, how we are Mekayim the mitzvah of Ishanis nowadays. Thank you so much for joining me for Liman HaTorah. The schos of Liman HaTorah should be Megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rabban Shem should say Yeshuas, Refuas, Parnasim, Shetuchim to all those in need. We should be zeichet to see the Bias Gal Tzedek, B'mehera, V'yameinu, Amen. Be well.